Welcome to our November live webinar for Answers for Families. And this month, we're talking about how to keep kids safe, going all the way from talking about car seats and do's and don'ts to how long you should baby-proof your home to items that you should certainly not have in your house with young children. And I am so pleased we've got two amazing experts to answer your questions and certainly send them along as you're listening to them. We've got Lois Lee, we've got Elisabeth DiPietro, and I would love for you just to introduce yourselves and talk about your experience, and then we'll just go right into some great questions that we've already gotten.
Great. Well, I am Dr. Lois Lee. I'm a pediatric emergency medicine physician here at Boston Children's Hospital. I also do research on injury prevention, and I'm chair of the Council on Injury, Violence, and Poison Prevention for the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Fantastic. You are the right person to talk to. And Dr. Pietro.
Hi, I'm Dr. Elisabeth DiPietro, and I am a primary care pediatrician at Hyde Park Pediatrics and have been there for over 20 years. And I also do work with the PPOC, Physicians Organization at Children's Hospital, and with the Mass Medical Society and Massachusetts chapter of the AAP.
Fantastic. And I should mention that this is live, obviously, but we are recording this, and we're going to have it in our archive on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and double check an answer that we have, or if you want to share this with your friends, family members that have young kids, you'll be able to forward that link once we get it in the archive. So don't worry that if you miss something, but we're going to try to be pretty thorough. So Dr. DiPietro,
Yes.
Let's start with what are the top baby-proofing tasks? I'm sure a lot of moms and dads are thinking, okay, where do I start?
Yeah.
And you've got a good perspective on how to start.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, Brian, and it can be overwhelming. You're a new parent, you have a new baby at home, you've got your home, and how do I keep it safe for my baby? And one way to think about it is just really thinking about where you're living and all the different rooms and where you're going to be spending most of the time with the baby. So first thing to do would be you bring your baby home and the baby is sleeping in the parent's bedroom with the family. Where's that baby going to be sleeping, and is that a safe sleeping place? So one thing would be the crib or the bassinet, making sure that your baby is sleeping on their back on a hard, flat surface. You don't want pillows in that sleeping space. You don't want crib bumpers in that sleeping space. You actually don't want to use a hand-me-down crib, really, because the safety things have changed a lot.
Right.
So you want to make sure it's up to code.
So some heirloom is
It's
a nice thought, but
nice gesture,
yes.
but that's not. So you want to kind of think about that. Just first, where's the baby spending most of their time sleeping? Also in that room, what also are you doing a lot of those first few weeks? You're doing a lot of changing of diapers and putting the baby on a changing table or a surface to change their diaper. And you want to, again, make sure that's a safe place, too. You don't want to have that near a window, just like I should remember, you don't want to have that crib or bassinet near a window where there are cords hanging down or the baby can kind of access that window. You want to always have your hand on the baby when you're changing the diaper or leaving them alone leaving them on a flat surface. You always want to have your hand on that baby.
Okay.
You can also have, they have little kind of ledges on the changing tables so that the
I've
baby
seen
is
that with a concave indentation.
Yeah, and also just like a little kind of elevated thing right around the corner, about 2 inches or so, would provide added protection for the baby.
But don't rely on that.
But don't rely on that. Hand on baby.
Okay.
Hand on baby. So that's the bedroom, and the sleeping space. Just some other things. What about Dr. Lee?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say for the babies, you think often, oh, they can't roll, but they can squiggle and move. And so again, even for the youngest babies, you always want to make sure you got your hand on them or on a blanket on the floor. But I think you can just go, room by room. And then also you have to think about the developmental stage of your child.
Of course.
And it's hard to be able to predict, when they actually are going to be able to roll or walk. But you do want to try to be one step ahead of them, right? So if you have a child who is getting older and you think they're going to be walking soon and you have stairs, think about, how you're going to keep the kid away from the stairs, usually with stair gates, so they don't fall down the stairs. And I think, again, just going room by room, what are things kids can get into? Are there cleaning supplies, laundry pods, actually, kids can ingest? Do you have firearms in the home? because even a 2-year-old actually is strong enough to pick up a firearm and pull the trigger.
Okay. I liked what you said about it's overwhelming, right? A new kid
Yeah.
coming home from the hospital. So maybe you could backdate it and try to go a little earlier in terms of thinking, don't think about the whole house, think about room to room.
Room to room.
Room to room. So you thought about the bedroom.
Bedroom.
Let's talk about the kitchen.
Absolutely. Next
Okay.
up, where you spend the rest of your time.
Right.
You know, and so really tired, you've been up all night, you have that nice hot cup of coffee. You know what else you don't want to have in your hand is the baby. So, you know, just think about room by room. Let's talk about like hot liquids and things like that are in the kitchen. So you want to keep those things separate. So you don't want to carry hot liquids and carry your baby, whether it's soup, coffee, tea, whatever. Also, let's again go back to the kitchen. So on the hot liquid track that we're talking about, as the baby is getting a little bit bigger and pulling to stand and maybe being able to reach the top of the stove, if you have a cooktop, making sure that the baby can't pull any hot liquids down off of the stove or off of the counter or off of the table. You know, if you've got your coffee there, that they can't grab it, because that's an easy way for babies to have burns on their skin.
And it's funny because I
Yeah.
had 3 children, and I think all 3 of them were squigglers, and they would like arch their back,
Yes.
and it'd be very sudden, and you'd be like, whoa. So I
Right.
can imagine if you are near a stove and they just kind of like do this kind of arching, that
Yeah.
could be really dangerous.
Yeah, they're unpredictable.
Unpredictable is a good.
They are
yeah.
very unpredictable. And so again, if you look around the kitchen too, just like we're talking about the stove. So if you have not, ideally it would be great to not be able to turn the stove on within the child or toddler's reach. But if you can't take the knobs off of the stove that operate the stove and the oven, you want to make sure that those are baby proofed. You don't want to leave the oven door open. You want to think about what sort of fuel is in your oven and stove. If it's gas, you want to make sure that you have your working smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors throughout the house, particularly in the kitchen. You want to make sure those are up to date and have regular battery checks and are making sure that those are checked frequently to make sure they're operating. Also in the kitchen, that's a great place for cleaning supplies, right? What we
Under
were
the
talking
sink.
about. Yeah.
Under the sink.
Yeah. So where do you think the best place for cleaning supplies are for, when you have young kids? Not under the sink.
Yeah,
correct?
my kids use that as a little clubhouse.
Right.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. So you want to have, even if you have those cabinets kind of baby-proof, the special baby-proofing lock, you really want to have those up and out of the way, And then some are particularly more harmful than others. Like some people have cleaned with lye. I don't think that's so popular anymore. That's one that I just don't bring through the front door, right?
Yeah.
Some people have laundry or the dishwasher pods,
Yeah.
as well as
For the dishwasher, right.
which is often under the cabinet, close to the
colorful and
dishwasher,
bright.
colorful, bright, look a little bit like a gummy, going right in that mouth, right? Because kids like to explore. They like to pick things up and explore and put it in their mouth. So that's a natural thing. Even if you say no, they're going to keep doing that. They're going to be drawn to that.
Right.
So that's something else you want to look at as you're looking around the kitchen.
Dr. Lee, what about like stairs and windows? We talked a little bit about cords and stair blockers.
Yeah, so we worry about kids falling down the stairs. So if you can, put in stair gates at the top and the bottom of the stairs. You want to prevent them from going up the stairs. And then also, especially in bedrooms or living areas where you're spending a lot of time with toddler-age children, you don't want them to be able to climb up and out through a window. And we know that this happens every spring, every summer here or in places where it's warm all the time. Kids are at risk. So just being really careful that you don't have furniture that is pushed up against a window that they can climb on and get out, unless you're able to secure the window either with a window guard or some kind of window that only opens at the top.
Of course, right. And then also furniture that needs to be attached to the wall.
Yes, kids love to climb.
Yeah.
And
Bookcases.
so bookcases, dresser drawers. So there recently actually was a federal law passed called the Sturdy Act. Basically now any kind of heavy furniture like that needs to be able to be secured to a wall. But if you have older furniture, obviously that law won't apply. So just being really cautious about, again, bedrooms, other rooms that have dresser drawers or bookcases, just making sure that the kids aren't able to climb it and pull that whole thing down on themselves.
Great. Why don't we talk about products, items, objects that should not be going through your front door?
Well, we do have the holidays coming, and so a lot of things these days use lithium batteries. We can't survive without lithium batteries. They are in everything. So you just need to be careful that if you have a remote control or a hearing aid, that those lithium batteries are really secure, and that if people take them out to remove them, that you secure them somewhere where kids can't get into them. Because if they ingest them, they actually can be lethal and can be very difficult, especially for a nonverbal child or a less verbal child, a toddler, or even an older child who might feel guilty and they don't want to tell anybody.
I don't want to say I just put this in my mouth.
Exactly. Yeah. And the way they present with trouble breathing or vomiting in this time of year might seem like a virus and can be hard to pick up. And any sort of toys made with high-powered magnets, again, it's the holidays, people might be giving these. If children swallow 2 or more of them, actually the magnets can cross and attract to each other across intestinal walls and can cause some serious damage. So just being really careful about those sort of things to keep them away and out of the reach of children.
Okay. And I think most important are firearms. So I think visiting your relatives over the holidays, I think that question of do you have firearms, and if you do, how are they stored, but also in your own home.
Very important, as I mentioned, with the handgun, even toddlers are able to pull a trigger. And so if you do have toddlers, even or older children and teenagers, you do want to make sure your firearms are stored securely. Right. And of course, it depends on why you have it. So if it's for hunting or sport, perhaps you can actually store them outside of your home. But if you have it for self-protection, then of course you want to be able to store it in a way that's secure, right. Way that you still feel safe. And so the American Academy of Pediatrics actually recommends that the safest way to store it is with the firearm unloaded, with the ammunition and the firearm stored and locked away separately, so that children can't access it, because it's all about preventing unauthorized access to a firearm for our kids. However, some families, they need it for self-protection and they don't feel like that's the way they can store it. You can buy lock boxes that are easily accessible, usually with a handprint or something else like that. Right. So only the authorized user can access that. So there are options for families to be able to store their firearms in different ways.
Perfect. And then I guess the other big topic of the year is cannabis and gummies both. So a lot of these gummies look very appealing to children. What would your recommendation be? And again, most people will have visitors or they're going to visit relatives, and certainly you're not going to know what other relatives will have in their bags.
And you bring up a great point, with the increased legalization of cannabis right. across the country, the rates of cannabis poisoning and ingestion by children has really skyrocketed.
And you're seeing this in the ER?
We're definitely seeing this in the emergency department, that children don't know. It looks like food to them. Right. And parents sometimes actually forget where they've put it, or maybe they thought they hid it in the back of the freezer, and then the child finds it. Mm-hmm. And the child doesn't realize, to them it looks like a chocolate bar. They eat the whole thing. Whereas an adult, would generally know that they don't eat the whole thing in one sitting. And so for younger children particularly, can be very hazardous and lead to some serious medical problems.
And I guess this goes without saying. So you find that a child has eaten this, call 911. Like, don't feel like, oh, maybe this child it'll wear off, because the size of the child and the dosage is so different.
Yeah, and the gummies I think are particularly challenging for the 2 and 3-year-olds. They look a lot like fruit chews.
Right.
So
right.
I think I just heard that each gummy has like 10 milligrams of THC, and your child is not able to, tolerate that sort of stuff.
Right.
So you need to call 911 and call the Poison Control Center. Ideally, you don't want them to have access to that, and you want to let everybody who is coming into your home know that. And if that is in your home, having it stored, locked safely away in a child-proof kind of container that they're not able to open.
Yeah. And just knowing that, hey, I've got toddlers home, my cousins are coming, just to say, let me just give you this list of things that I really can't have you bring because I've got this 3-year-old. And have that comfortable conversation and very clear and succinct.
Yeah. I mean, I think the danger is when you've got company and family, it's great because you're seeing people that you haven't seen in a while. Everybody's distracted. You've got stuff in your purse or your bag or your diaper bag, and there might be a residual edible in there.
Yeah.
And that's where, every child is certainly very curious. So they're looking in different bags. That's kind of what they do. They explore.
Hide and seek.
And seek. They explore with their hands, and then they put it in their mouth. So this is kind of a new kind of concern that's really become more of an issue in the past few years.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, Brian, it's just important to ask whether or not you're going to somebody's home to visit or somebody's coming to visit you. But particularly if you're going to someone else's home where you're not familiar with the surroundings, asking about, how the medications and cleaning products are stored, how are any firearms stored, how are maybe any cannabis edibles stored as well, just to make sure that the focus really is on the safety of the child so everybody can have a good time together.
Yeah. Yeah, I was mentioning I've got a scar when I was a toddler visiting a relative with a fireplace, and we didn't have a fireplace growing up, and we're running around, and that corner brick, can really do some damage. So take it from me. I mean, those foam corners that might not stick perfectly, and then glass coffee tables with sharp corners. That's like right eye level. Yeah. So take it from me. It's real. So how long or when do we stop baby-proofing our home? Or is it dependent? I mean, I'm sure you see older children in the ED with some of these issues that you would think maybe it wouldn't happen?
Yeah, so it really does depend on the age and stage of your own child. And, you will have some very small children who aren't very adventurous, right? But then you'll have older children who you think maybe they should know better. But again, children are curious. It's partly how they learn about their world. So I think you know your child best. And certainly for the younger toddlers, you need to keep all those things away. But for older age children, again, just making sure that there aren't things that they can fall off of, making sure that they can't get burned from a hot stove or hot liquids, and keeping firearms away from them and cannabis as well.
Great. That's a good summary. Let's move on to car seats. I'm sure people have lots of questions about, can I inherit this car seat? It worked for my older brother, or how do I install this car seat? It's so difficult. Or where in the car should the car seat go? So let's just talk about that.
Yeah, so again, depends on the age and the stage of your child. Also depends on what state you're in. There are different laws around car seats. But what I can tell you here in the state of Massachusetts, that children, certainly until the age of 8 and or until they're 4 foot 8 inches, that they need to be in a car seat or a booster seat. So generally, once kids are over the age of 4 or 5, we switch them over to a booster seat. And the whole idea is the school-age child, they just can't sit appropriately in a seat belt. What happens if they're sitting without a booster seat is that the seat belt cuts across the neck, and then they end up putting it against their back. And then the lap belt, rather than being over the hip bones, is actually over the abdomen, which is quite soft. So in the event of a crash, they can get some serious injuries. Booster seats literally boost them up so that the seat belt fits across your chest and the lap belts across your hip bones like in an adult, and again, to keep them safer in the event of a crash. And the thing is, we do know, especially car seats for younger ones can be very expensive, but the recommendation is that you really need to get rid of that car seat after 6 years because they are made of plastic parts, and we just worry that the integrity of the car seat will degrade over time, especially in places like New England where it can be 100 degrees down to 30 degrees, within a few months.
Right. And if that car seat has been in an accident, it's no longer viable.
Correct. So if you have been in a crash, even if the car seat looks 100% okay, and hopefully your child's 100% okay, you also need to throw that car seat out because, again, something about the force of the crash may compromise the integrity of the car seat.
Got it. And then again, the transition, let's just say that the height again to go into the booster. How tall?
So there's not a specific height, but generally what we say is newborn should be in a rear-facing car seat, and the law is really up to 1 year, but really the safe thing is to keep them rear facing up until 2 years because it just supports their head and their neck better. And then you can put them in a forward facing car seat until about 4 or 5 years of age. Then you put them in a booster seat until they're at least 4'7" or 4'8", although the law in Massachusetts says you can transition when you're 8. It really isn't so much about age, it's really more about your height and how well you fit with the booster seat and or seatbelt.
Yeah. And my kids love the booster seat because it had a little
Cup
holder. They're like, I'm very special.
Yes, and not in the front seat.
And not, so let's
Not in the front seat.
do not put
You want
either baby or toddler or 6-year-old.
Or 6-year-old. You want to be ideally 13 before you're in the front seat because of the airbag, and at least 80 pounds. So something to think about. And the other thing about car seats is usually there's a sticker on the side of the car seat. I always have parents ask me at well visits, when can I change and can I use this car seat? And usually there's information about the height, weight, all that kind of stuff on a sticker on the car seat. If you can
Do you
find
ever
it.
recommend going to the fire department? I know that's popular. People have done that.
You can
'cause
call
you got to really get it in there.
They are hard to install,
They
so
are.
call your fire department because many of them do. We actually do have a community car seat fitting clinic here at Boston
Wonderful.
Children's Hospital. If you're from the Boston area, you can just call the Injury Prevention Program. We also offer them to our patients in the primary care clinic and also at the Martha Elliott Health Center. But for those who may not be based in the Boston area, if you have questions, the American Academy of Pediatrics as well as the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, NHTSA, and the CDC all have a really good resources if you have any questions about, how do you install, what are the right kind of car seats. And some clinics are able to provide car seats at cost or even free. So you might ask about that for your pediatrician if you're having trouble, financing these because they can be very expensive.
Sure. And we're going to be sending this with our Answers blog on the Boston Children's Hospital website, and we'll have a link to that injury prevention clinic, that phone number and link. So that's great. Anything about that back seat, objects or items that are really not safe for a child to have?
So I think number one, potential strangulation things. So we
Okay.
talked a little bit at the start about cords and things like that.
Cords.
You want to keep that idea and that thought in your head as your baby or your child is in the car. So you don't really want to attach things to them with cords, especially when they're rear facing. You can't see what's going on with them. You do have a lot of parents will have mirrors
Yep.
that they can see the baby. You don't want to have things in the car that are going to act as potential projectile objects if you're in a crash. The other thing is you want to make sure when you're putting your baby or your child in a car seat that they're not wearing a heavy snowsuit. We're in New England, so there's a lot of heavy snowsuits because they're not fitting as well. The straps aren't fitting as well.
Right.
So you can put a blanket. Most of the families I have come in have the little zip-up car seat blanket type things to help keep their baby warm in that situation.
That's a great idea. Right, if it's really puffy, the straps are loose.
Yes, exactly.
Good, never thought of that.
Yeah.
Anything else about car seats and safety? I think we've covered everything.
We've covered a lot, and again, just to reiterate, so families realize why do we need kids 12 and older only to sit in the front seat is because the airbag for an infant in a car seat, obviously it can hit the back of the car seat, but even for a child who you think may be old enough to sit in the front seat, if an airbag does deploy in a low impact crash, it really can catch them at the neck and cause serious head and neck injuries. Their bodies just are not designed to be tall enough or to be strong enough to really be able to engage with the force of an airbag. So that's why we recommend they sit in the back.
Yeah, I can't imagine seeing that injury in the ED. We've gotten some great questions that have been submitted, and one of them is about this expiration date on the car seat. Why is it? Why is there a date? And is it? And I guess you mentioned it earlier about the weather trends and patterns. Is there any other reason? Maybe new models, new technology.
Yeah, so mostly it's about the integrity of the plastic of the car seat, which is part of it, but also the fabric, right? So all of that you can imagine will degrade over time, and you just want to make sure that the pieces are as strong as they're supposed to be. And so they're tested to make sure that they will stay, and be able to keep your child secure. But it's really, again, at the end of the day, with changes in temperature, chemical makeup, but also with new models having new safety features, that you do want to make sure that once your car seat is 6 years that you throw it out.
Yeah. Wow, this has been fantastic. I know you wanted to mention, so Saturday, November 18th, is National Injury Prevention Day.
Yes.
And I think it's just the timing of this live webinar is perfect for this. Just let's talk about it. It's in 40 cities.
It's in more than 40 cities, and their hospitals have reached out to their cities and towns to get mayoral proclamations. We're lighting up hospitals and major landmarks in green. So here at Boston, we'll be lighting up Boston Children's Hospital, the front lights in green, the Prudential Center, the Museum of Science, the IBU Local 103 billboard are all going to be recognizing the importance of injury prevention, not just for kids, but for everyone.
Yeah.
And we'll be joining, again, over 40 cities and landmarks across the country and hospitals just to make sure everybody remembers it's so important to keep all of us safe.
Yeah, the timing couldn't be better. Do you want to add anything else?
I feel like we have to talk about pool safety and drowning.
Yeah.
Yes, we did
as
do a
another-
webinar in the spring on pool safety.
I
but
know that there was a safety, and so I think
But
we
there's
should just
swimming all year round.
make sure that we remind
Please.
parents that drowning is a really number one cause of accidental death in the younger kids. And it could be in a bathtub, it could be in a bucket of, cleaning water, it could be in a lake or a stream, near your house, it could be in a pool. So you do want to just be aware of what's going on, again, especially at those larger family gatherings. If there's a pool that people are going to or
Right.
at somebody's home, just knowing where your child is.
And it still sticks
and the
with
fences around the pool.
the fences.
obviously.
And it still sticks with me is we talked about this at the last webinar. You got a group of adults and everyone's having a
Yeah.
good time, and every adult assumes that the other adult
Right.
is the lifeguard or
Yes.
who's going to
Yeah.
watch out. But that assumption, and then everyone's like, I thought you were watching, I thought you were watching.
Yeah.
So that really, like, at the beginning of the party,
Yeah.
okay, every half hour we're going to switch, or
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
take over, but that's your job,
Yeah.
not to talk
Like
and
the
eat
designated driver, designated pool watcher.
I
I
love
mean, they
that.
have a title,
Yeah.
designated pool
I
watcher.
love that.
Right,
I
and so
never-
they shouldn't be drinking alcohol. They
Right.
really should just be
Yeah.
focused on the kids. And we know that that's really important. And that's for kids who know how to swim. If your
Right.
kids are younger, then obviously you want to always make sure you keep a hand on them as well.
Right.
And you cannot rely on the little floaties necessarily to keep them safe.
Right. Fantastic. Good reminder. Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining this webinar. Like I said, it's going to be on our archive, and we've got lots more topics on our Answers blog at Boston Children's. I want to thank Dr. Lois Lee, Dr. Elisabeth DiPietro for joining us. And again, what a perfect week to talk about injury prevention.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.